I was just kind of always obsessed with being big, getting bigger. I really enjoyed training. I was kind of quite a sporty kid, so I enjoyed pushing myself.
Some of the difficulties in navigating social media nowadays, different schools of thought as to like what builds the most muscle, how you should be moving, how much volume you should be training with, how heavy you should be training.
That was my kind of moment when I realized I have been very dogmatic in my thinking when I saw how effective a method that was completely in opposition to the one that I was married to was. That realization for me has changed my outlook and my mindset, not only my training.
What did you find the toughest parts of accomplishing that kind of fat loss were?
The suffering element of it, I wouldn't say was the worst bits at all. The hunger, the low energy, all of that was kind of doable. It was probably the effect that it was having externally.
But my third prep, that was the nastiest one, where I tried to push the elite level conditioning by myself before I was ready for it. That was when I started to do really weird stuff like food guarding, like I didn't want to eat around people. I didn't want to go do any social eating, like I didn't want to go eat at restaurants.
So many things that I did, I wouldn't do in hindsight on the second time around, which is one reason I think I was keen to share this with other people.
What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm excited to be joined by Rory Linnane. He's a physiotherapist, online coach, and a natural bodybuilder. For the first half of our conversation, Rory and I spent time talking about social media in the context of fitness and how the often very divisive content can positively or negatively impact a person's progress, including our own personal experiences with that. And for the second half of our conversation, we talked all about Rory's natural bodybuilding competition prep experience. And not just the positive parts of it all, but also the parts that he really found himself struggling with and the parts that he ultimately ended up learning a lot from. For both the people that are newer to natural bodybuilding and who are prospectively thinking about perhaps competing for the first time, and the veteran natural bodybuilders out there who have a lot of experience with competing and doing contest prep, I think you're going to find a ton of relatability and value from Rory's story. I know you're going to love this episode, so let's just dive right in. To start things off, can you share who you are and what you do?
So I'm 26. I live in Dublin in Ireland. I'm a physiotherapist, a few years out of college now. I'm working in a big hospital in Dublin, and I am an amateur natural bodybuilder. I've competed in one show, and it's a bit of a hobby and a passion on the side that I enjoy, and I do a little bit of online coaching as well.
Okay, so you're a physiotherapist, you've competed in natural bodybuilding show, and you coach clients online. And do you coach like mostly mainstream clientele that want to lose body fat and build muscle? Do you coach like bodybuilding clients, competitive clients, or who do you work with?
At the moment, I've nobody who's planning on competing. So it's kind of lifestyle and, pretty much people of my own demographic, people my age who maybe want to lose weight, put on a bit of muscle, some of them more serious than others. I've just had one guy sign up who's planning on doing a photo shoot. So that's probably the biggest kind of physique aspiration that I've got out of any of the guys at the minute. But just a bunch of guys who want to be a bit stronger, be a bit healthier, and enjoy their time in the gym a bit more. So I'm enjoying it.
Cool. And then you also work as a physiotherapist in a hospital, you mentioned. Do you work with any specific kind of clientele there? Like, do you work with like sports related rehab clients, or is it kind of just mainstream clientele within the hospital too? Or who do you usually work with?
So because I'm kind of still, I'm only a few years out of college. We do rotations where you spend 4 months in a designated area. So you get really good broad spectrum kind of training. But as a result, it's kind of changing who you're working with hugely from one 4-month rotation to the next. So currently I'm on cardiothoracics, which is people who have had kind of lung procedures or cardiac procedures, and getting them better. There's elements of physio that I didn't even know existed prior to going into the course and stuff, which I'm now doing on a daily basis, like sticking tubes down people and you know helping them to recover after these huge surgeries and things like that. Whereas traditionally, I'd always thought of physio as being more of a kind of a sports-based profession, and I have done lots of rotations as well, which are then more sports specific or orthopedic based, or involve more so in what you might traditionally think of as physiotherapy. So I think for the moment, I'm going to kind of continue that training, keep going through the cycles, and then eventually might land on a senior role in a hospital, or potentially work in somewhere in another field in sports, or I think still early days yet. So I'm just kind of getting a bit of an idea of everything. So then later down the line, I can kind of specialize.
That's cool. The way that I've admittedly viewed physiotherapy has been from more of like a sports related kind of a spectrum, or an orthopedic kind of a spectrum, that kind of rehabilitation, like coming back from broken bones or joint or connective tissue injuries, that sort of thing. So it's cool that you get that there is such a large kind of window of individuals that benefit from getting that kind of help.
Mm.
I worked with a physiotherapist several times. The last time was quite a while ago. I think it was my third year. No, it would have been right before my first year of university, like 10 years ago or longer. I broke my finger, and I had to get a little bit of rehab with that, which was
Yeah,
definitely helpful. That's for sure. Do
yeah.
you?
Hated.
Yeah. Do
It's tough.
you?
Go on, sorry.
Do you find that the knowledge and experience that you have with that kind of work, does it help you with your own training? Like, have you ever found yourself injured or working through any kind of like nagging pains or injuries that have been directly benefited from the knowledge that you have with your background with physiotherapy?
Yeah, I have. I think sometimes what I would tell patients to do is difficult to do myself. They always say, like, clinicians make the worst patients. But I think you definitely you do get a lot of experience, and I would say even in the inverse. So a lot of times, what I've learned through training has complemented the role and the profession as well, and being able to coach people who are into sports and into lifting how to get back to those type of things. Because I've been to many physios in the past, but not all of them really have a particular background in sports or lifting. So it can be tricky when they just tell you, well, stop bench pressing 100 kilos twice a week, when that's all you want to do. So having that background and having that perspective, it definitely has helped me to be a clinician and help patients. And then obviously the other way, kind of knowing how to work around injuries, and knowing, kind of coming with that approach of, I want to keep people in the gym, I want to keep people active, and I want to be able to manage my own injuries in a similar fashion then. So yeah, I think the two complement each other very well, and it probably was why I kind of wanted to go down that road initially. Was my love with the gym and my love of lifting kind of got me into. I loved biology in school as well, so it just kind of naturally all kind of fit together, and kind of laid itself out as a pretty obvious career choice for myself. But yeah.
I feel like that would be one of the most beneficial backgrounds to have as someone that's passionate about lifting weights, and someone that's competed, and also you who also coach physique clients.
Mm.
I find that for myself, the thing that most often gets in the way of my own progress, and sometimes with my clients too, but often with myself, the biggest obstacle is running into like nagging pains or injuries every now and again. And I'm a slow learner, and I've had to figure out a lot of things on my own. But one of the most valuable things that I have learned is how to work around nagging pains and injuries and prevent them from happening. So I feel like having the back kind of background that you have would be absolutely invaluable in making continuous progress and preventing those kind of obstacles from coming up. So that makes a lot of logical sense to me, and it makes sense that that's how you kind of gravitated into that field.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first started lifting weights?
So I I kind of always just wanted to. I've had this obsession with just being big and strong. I remember when I was like a kid, I would always, I would be picking out the action figures with the biggest muscles, and then, when I was, 7 or 8 years old, I watched Rocky, and then I started doing push-ups in my room every night. And I remember we had a push-up contest in school. We do one a year, and I was so delighted because I've been preparing for that moment for years and years without anybody, even myself, knowing. Um, but yeah, I was just kind of always obsessed with being big, getting bigger. I really enjoyed training. I was kind of quite a sporty kid, so I enjoyed pushing myself. And then I was like begging my mom to join a gym for the longest time, and she obviously thought it was going to stunt my growth and make me a dwarf. So she'd never let me go at it. But then I convinced her to sign some waiver when I was 15, saying I was 16, and I promised her I'd only do the elliptical. And then I was allowed in. And yeah, I think so. Since 15, I'm now 26. I've been training for that length of time. Very mixed in like the approach, the knowledge, the intensity, the application. It's been a mixed bag, but I definitely feel like every year it has gotten better. And yeah, I just kind of ever since being allowed in, ever since getting my mum signed that waiver, I've kind of just loved it and had a passion for it and made some friends through it. And yeah, I think I definitely I feel really lucky to have found this hobby and this passion because it brings a huge amount of kind of enjoyment and joy to my life on a daily basis, thankfully. So I'm just grateful that it's something I get to engage in.
I can just imagine you saying like, "Hey mom, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm just going to do elliptical." And then, a few weeks go by, then a few months go by, you get home and all of a sudden your mom notices that you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And she's like, "The elliptical trainer is doing that to you?"
Yeah. She suddenly quits doing the elliptical.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Did you find that when you got the gym membership and you started lifting, did you notice that you got results pretty quick? Like, were you a quick learner? Did the technique come quick to you? Or did you find that it was a really tough learning curve, that you were slow to learn the whole lifting thing? And I'm asking that
Yeah,
largely in part because I was a really slow learner. I
yeah.
was totally disregarded training technique, just threw weights around, and I didn't make a ton of progress initially because I just really stubborn. But I'm wondering, what was your initial experience like? Did you make a lot of progress right away?
On some things more than others. I was a bit top heavy for a while. So I love training upper body. I love bench. I think naturally I have kind of just strong pressing muscles. So like, from the early days doing all those push-ups, like I had a knack for it. So I would train the things that I liked, and I kind of knew about the don't skip legs culture. So I'd hit them too, but not with the same kind of intensity or intent. But I think like getting in, yeah, it looked horrendous starting off, like bouncing barbells off the chest, and like, just those teenagers that are pissing everybody off in the corner of the gym, screaming and spilling monster around the place. But no, it was good fun. And I think as as I kind of started to, as I went into college and I started to become more passionate about it and start to study it a little bit outside, that's when I probably refined things like technique. I do think social media, you know when kind of looked at through a little bit of a with a little bit of a knowledgeable eye, or when you know how to sift through some of the garbage, can be really really useful. And like, finding people like the 3DMJ guys or Jeff Nippert or some of his stuff, it definitely made me more aware of those things and the importance of good technique for, being really effective with your energy and with your training and getting the most out of it, and reducing injury risk and all that kind of thing. So it's something that over time got better. Was, I'm sure, abhorrent at the beginning, but I kind of just had a lot of passion and I was enjoying it, so didn't really mind. And thankfully, my joints were young and able to regenerate at a quicker rate than they can now. So I don't have any long lasting battle scars. But yeah, it's still a work in progress. I still find now we'll see somebody giving a technique tip on Instagram, and I'm like, you know what, that actually looks pretty good. And I have my mindset over the course. I've had the whole Dunning-Kruger's effect thing happen to me, where I found my camp, and I thought, okay, this is now, this person has presented evidence in a way that's really convincing to me. So I was like, oh, this is the way, this is gospel. And then got a little bit narrow-minded, and thinking that this is the only way to do things. And then kind of found evidence contrary in my own training, or found something else that seemed just as good, or and then I think you get to a stage where you stop being so certain and you start being a little bit more open to different suggestions. And I think, yeah, as much as physically what's happened in the gym, and the look of my technique, I think there's been a big development mentally in how I approach things, in being more open-minded, in trying out new things. And if something doesn't seem to make sense to me immediately, I don't automatically throw it out and call it stupid. I try and hear it out, give it a go, see if it works for me, try and think of contexts in which it might work, or because I don't know if you did this when you were starting out, but like, I'd be there maybe sitting at lifting as heavy as I could every single time I was going, and kind of looking around at the guys beside me, seeing how much they were lifting, and maybe feeling somewhat superior because the guy who's maybe got 10 kilos more than me was lifting 1 kilo lighter or something. But you don't realize that guy's probably doing supersets and finished off and doesn't really care, is just getting a lift in. So I think the mindset thing definitely shifts and morphs over the course of your lifting career, and that is probably the more rewarding thing long term. Obviously, it's great to have bigger muscles and all that, but it's cool to be able to see how it kind of bleeds into other areas of your life, and it kind of makes you a better, more wise person when you approach different kind of challenges in your life.
Yeah.
But
So much of that is relatable. I'm thinking too about how social media can be super, super helpful, and thinking back to my own like early lifting years. I remember I was really into Mike Thurston. He's a UK guy.
Yeah.
Before he's kind of doing, because he's kind of got more of a general podcast, YouTube channel brand now, but he's still very, very fitness.
Jacked.
Yeah, jacked. But I remember like 10 years ago, or I don't know, we'll say 7 to 10 years ago, his content all revolved around like how to lift weights well.
Yeah.
And he was one of the people that I kind of took some notes from as to how to move with good technique. He has amazing technique. But some of the other points that you had were really interesting, very relatable too. Specifically, like some of the difficulties in navigating social media nowadays, the different camps of or different schools of thought as to like what builds the most muscle, how you should be moving, how much volume you should be training with, how heavy you should be training.
Yeah.
I think that I've fallen into that before, become infatuated with one camp, and I've become dogmatic with certain camps of like high volume, low volume, different splits, so on and so forth. But something that has taken me a long time to learn, but like you noted, I think it comes with time and experience, is that maybe the best way to utilize social media isn't to get sucked into one camp or the other, but to maybe learn from both camps, try to find what the happy medium is. So it's not just high volume is good and low volume is bad, or vice versa. It's like maybe high volume is good sometimes, and low volume, heavier stuff is good at other times. And maybe it's helpful to find which context each of those different approaches might be more or less helpful, and to try to figure that out for yourself. That might be the best way to kind of approach social media nowadays. But I can
Yeah.
definitely relate to that. That's for sure.
I think the algorithms, unfortunately, are not promoting of nuance. No one wants to sit and hear a well-reasoned argument why this and this can all work in different. They just want to hear somebody screaming at them, telling them to do 6 to 8 reps and nothing else works. Like that sells, and I think if people stick with it long enough, hopefully they'll have the opportunity to have their mind changed, be it through their own experience, or if they're working with somebody else, seeing how it doesn't work. The same thing doesn't work the same for every person. And when you do have your mind changed like that, and you've been so dogmatic, it's really eye-opening, and it really kind of blows the back doors off and just makes you realize, wow, that's a bad approach. And it's kind of an until you have it something kind of moment that I think it's very difficult for you to explain that to somebody, or to explain somebody out of a dogmatic, narrow-minded kind of camp of this is the only way to do it, because it's kind of a tribe as well. Like these groups are like emerging like little religions, like the high volume or the low volume, or and everybody within your echo chamber is screaming the same thing at you and pointing at the enemies, saying they're all wrong. So I think it's a good even learning opportunity for you to try out what the other guy is doing, or listen to it honestly, or because there are content like just that high volume, low volume, or high reps, low reps. Like if I was to tell all of my patients, okay, the only thing that works for muscle growth is 6 to 8 reps at an RIR of 1, I'm not going to have many patients that are going to be able to apply to that, especially if they're older, or they're injured. The fact that I can maybe get them to do higher reps, which are going to be less painful and less provocative, and get them to push at a decent intensity at that might be the gateway for them to be able to rehab. And the same context, like they might not be able to push themselves to a 5 RM just at the minute, because they just don't have that in them. But you can start to train them there and get them there and make them a lot of progress along the way without and if you just chuck the baby out of the bathwater, you're just limiting the amount of tools in your toolkit. So we know that lots of things can work. So yeah.
There's so many good points in there. It can be so tough. I don't know if you found this, but I found that it can be so tough to, like, once you do get kind of sucked into one camp or one school of thought, to kind of separate yourself from your whatever belief you develop, to try something out, try something new that might actually help your progress. It can be so difficult, but like you noted, like working with maybe some of your clients, or like helping with the physiotherapy work that you do, getting them to step outside of what they're used to doing, which maybe that's what they're used to doing is taking away from their recoverability or their ability to recover. Getting them to try something that's outside of what they're used to is actually what's needed so they can recover. But it's just that initial separation from whatever you currently believe that can be so difficult. I've definitely found that for myself. For example, talking about high and low volume, specifically for me, I've been in the past really attached to the concept of, if I'm going to build more muscle, I just have to have not necessarily more rep volume, but more overall weekly set volume. So it's just like always about doing more sets and having very high training frequency training. There's 3 to 5 years where I was training 7 days a week and then 6 days a week. And I was just really, really, really attached to this high volume principle that that's how you build more muscle. And a lot of that came from research, like the research that I don't want to misquote anything, but like I'm thinking of like the Brad Schoenfeld work showing that, like, upward of 40 plus sets per body part per week can lead to extra muscle growth. So I'm thinking, okay, well then I guess I'm just gonna add more and more sets per week. But something that I've learned for myself is that now I've significantly dropped down my set volume and my training frequency, which is largely from the help of another voice in the social media world, one of our mutual coach, so Jeff Alberts, he's
Yeah.
someone that has actually pushed me and encouraged me to drop down my overall training frequency and set volume. And I've actually found I've built more muscle. I've experienced injuries less, and my training progress and quality of life has just been better. Although there still have been challenges with that, but it has overall been worth it. Have you found any? Are there any specific examples where it's been tough for you to kind of separate yourself from a certain belief that you've developed from the social media world, that you found that you had to change your belief to make more progress?
Yeah, I think we were in the same cult of the high volume group, and ascending set volumes even on a meso to meso cycle. You probably can kind of get a gist of the camp that I was kind of falling into with that. But yeah, I think thankfully Jeff also showed me the light, and he kind of Trojan horsed it a little bit. So coming into the prep, he was like, "Okay, so we've got to start dropping the volume because recovery capacity is going down." And I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then like we got to the end of the prep, and I was like, "Okay, so when are we doing like 10 sets per muscle group on each exercise again?" He's like, "We're not." He's like, "That's it. We're done with that shit." And I think it was very limiting because I was not able to hit the appropriate intensities that I needed to be able to kind of continue to see progress with the set volume session volumes that I was kind of engaged in. And I think it's also there was like a little bit of fear entrenched in it as well, in that I can't try that, or I've got my person that I'm listening to that I really believe and they're doing it and that it's right. And there was that fear of, well, if I'm wrong and I try the other thing, then I'm going to be losing progress. And the only thing I care about is big biceps, so like I'm not going to try that shit. So yeah, and I think that was my kind of moment when I realized, oh shit, I have been very dogmatic in my thinking when I saw how effective a method that was completely in opposition to the one that I was married to was. Do you know what I mean? So I think that realization for me has changed my outlook and my mindset, not only my training. And yeah, and it sucks as well because it was a little bit of a, you're pouring more effort in for less results, and you're working against yourself unknowingly. And I think I'm very grateful to Jeff for showing me the light, because I'm making more progress than I ever have, like dramatically more, with less time having to be spent in the gym, which initially I didn't like the idea of. But now that post prep life has resumed and I have other obligations and stuff, it's nice. And it's also nice to know that I can do that. That if for some reason work picked up, or I had other time commitments, I'm not going to lose all my gains. If I can get in the gym even two to four times a week, I'm probably still going to be able to at least maintain and probably progress if it's closer to four. So yeah, I think that was kind of probably the big thing that I've been referencing in terms of changing your mindset. That was the one light bulb that I was like, wow, I really had this shit backwards. And it's been great since. I've been enjoying training more than ever. And that change in kind of volume and intensity has been one of the key drivers of that.
Yeah. It seems almost counterintuitive, right? Like you would
Yeah,
think, at least this is the way that I thought about things. It's like, well, I want bigger muscles. That means
yeah,
that I have to do more. But
mm,
it's like you kind of have to flip things upside down, and or at least I did, and understand that doing more sometimes actually means making less progress, not more. That actually becomes the counterproductive thing to do. So I'm right there with you. I had to learn that through Jeff as well. And it
yeah,
is nice to see someone else that has clearly a very well developed physique, that has built their physique doing this.
mm,
So that was something that I think I needed to make that initial leap of faith to kind of dive
yeah,
into the lower volume stuff. And the other thing is there's an element of it that I find to be really fun. I don't know if you found this too, where it's like, okay, so maybe I'm going from 6 days a week of training down to 4 days a week of training. And instead of doing 3 sets per muscle per session, so I do a full body training split to give you some
Mhm.
more context, I'm dropping that down to 2 sets. So it feels like, man, I'm only doing 2 sets for my quads, only 2
That
sets
is
for my
crazy.
biceps. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Still, like,
But I almost found that there's an element of it that's more fun now, where it's like,
yeah,
okay, so 4 training sessions per week, only 2 sets per muscle, which means
yeah,
that I've got 4 days a week and for each of those 4 days, I've only got 2 chances to
yeah,
smoke each of those muscles,
yeah.
where it's like, I gotta hit the target with there's a little bit more, I don't I'll say
Urgency.
pressure, a little bit more, yeah, urgency to make each of those sets because there's fewer of them, to make them more efficient, make them more effective. And part of that is there's an element of that that's kind of fun. It's like there's an extra challenge to it. I don't know if you found the same thing, but
Yeah, totally, 100%. I think, yeah, you described it perfectly. Like the you kind of sandbag yourself. I think I've heard somebody say, and it's like when you have 5 sets on the same exercise, and some exercises you can do at smaller muscle groups, it's more manageable. But if you've got like 5 sets of hack squats and you're pushing to a one or two, or God forbid failure if you're a real masochist, 5 sets of that it's gonna look different the first set, whether you're doing 2 sets or whether you're doing 5. And like maybe it won't on the one time where you're testing the theory or whatever, but if you're doing that over a long period of time, there's going to be days when you're not motivated. And if you honestly think that you're going to be able to hit 5 sets to like with the same level of intensity as you will 2, I think you're probably not being completely honest, or maybe you are, but I think give it a go, because it's such a difference, the mindset. And it's more enjoyable. Like I enjoy pushing harder for fewer sets than, because I'm somebody who likes to train with high intensity, but it was beating me up and killing me. And a couple of weeks into a meso, I was suddenly losing motivation to train. Um, like I didn't miss a lot of sessions, but I haven't missed a session since my prep, like once. I love going to the gym and I love hitting them with high intensity. I'm never feeling like completely overtrained or beat up, and my progress has been so consistent. It used to be kind of a, when I hit a PR, it's a great day because it's like the sun is shining, but the sun never shines in Ireland. But it's like it's just on a whim. I didn't know what caused it. Whereas now, if I've got everything dialed, I know I'm going to go in there. I have the energy. I'm motivated to smash it. And in those 2 sets, I can probably predict that I'm going to hit a little bit of PR, a rep PR, or maybe even add a little bit of load consistently week on week. So no, it's a huge revelation. And I'm not even a low volume guy. Like I still hit moderate volume on everything. I still do kind of prescribe to the idea that you should be probably hitting as much volume as you can handle if you want to see the most growth. But I think that is a caveat that I didn't have and I wasn't aware of, because I didn't know that I wasn't handling the volume that I was engaging in. So yeah, like I'm probably like around 10 sets for most of my stuff per week at the moment. But it's clearly working. So yeah, I think it's hard to argue with the results, and you can try and argue with papers, but when you've done both for years, and it's just night and day the difference, it's inevitable to opt with the anecdote at that stage, I suppose.
yeah, I'm completely in the same boat as you. And the other thing that comes to mind as well is so not just having the ability to continuously progress for longer, but also to I find that I run into injuries significantly less, which also is a big part of how I'm able to progress for longer and to make each of my sets more efficient, as I don't have to like modify my program regularly, change my rep targets or my rep ranges to accommodate for sore knees or sore hips or whatever. I still run into nagging pains and still have to make modifications every now and again, but it still happens, or it happens significantly less with more uh, appropriate training volumes rather than just adding more and more volume
Yeah,
consistently.
yeah.
So when did you first consider doing something like competing in natural bodybuilding?
So I did my show last summer, and it was the year before that. Bodybuilding is not a big thing in Ireland. Natural bodybuilding even less so. I think we've got quite a closed kind of traditional conservative country in general. Like the Catholic Church ran everything for years and years, and the idea of a guy painting himself orange and frolicking around the stage in his underwear is not something that is probably super normal around my society. So I think I never even considered it. Like, even though I really love training and it made so much sense that I was literally hypertrophy training for like 10 years just because I loved it, and never even would have considered doing a show. And then I saw a friend of mine, like kind of a friend of a friend, but he would have like swung in the same social circles. And I saw him, he did a show, and I just thought, that's so fucking cool. Sorry, I don't know. Are we allowed to curse in this?
You're good. You're good.
But I was like, that's so cool. Like, one that I actually thought the bodybuilding itself was cool. I thought he looked unreal. He was shredded. And then I thought it was really cool that he was going kind of outside of the norm and pushing against the bias a little bit. And it opened up the opportunity, I suppose, in my head, because previously it just wasn't a thing that I even thought was an option. And then I was like, you know what, like, if he's doing it, and I had respect for him for going against the grain and doing something that he just kind of wanted to pursue. And I think a lot of people did. And I was like, yeah, well, why don't I give it a go? So then I decided I'll do a big bulk. I'll do kind of take training really seriously. Make sure I'm trying to get as dialed as I possibly can, because motivation as well was starting to kind of not wane. Like, I was still training a lot, but I didn't really have any purpose. So then this was kind of like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna come out with build proper program, try and get my nutrition in kind of line a little better. And then I did a mega super bulk. I didn't have Jeff on board at this stage. So I did my biggest bulk ever. I got to 101 kilos, which was my heaviest body weight ever by probably about 5 kilos, or 12 pounds, or whatever the conversion is. And then I said, grand, I'm going to go from the top of the mountain straight down on a bike to a bodybuilding stage. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't do that again. I think it could have been done a little bit smoother, with some cleanup phases or whatever else. But yeah, so then I booked a show for last summer. And then I did a 6-month cut, basically. I lost about 22 kilos in 6 months, which was intense.
That's a lot. Yeah. 6 months.
Yeah, it's like a kilo a week for 6 months. So yeah, it was heavy going. But yeah, I suppose that was kind of the background of why I went for it and what I went for it. And yeah.
Now, did you do that cut before you started working with Jeff? Like, did you do that on your own accord, or was that something that Jeff got you started with, like a pre-prep positioning phase before doing the prep itself?
Yeah, so I did. I was probably a little bit narrow-minded on the whole coaching thing initially as well, which is why I am now probably like the idea of coaching and want to help coach others, because I see the benefit. And I was a little bit of a non-believer before. I was like, I like training. I love doing this stuff. I know what I'm doing. I've watched YouTube videos on this shit, but until you've done the thing, and in Jeff's case, done the thing 40 times or whatever number of times he's competed at this stage, you're just not going to be able to perform as well or make the right choices or know what to do. So you can read all the articles you want. You're going to benefit from someone in your corner, and I would have benefited from him in my corner a little bit earlier. But I was like, I could do with a coach, maybe just for the end bit, for the posing and for just getting completely peeled, just to get my glutes shredded. So I did 3 months by myself. I contacted the guys at 3DMJ. I said, hey, help me land this plane. I think they actually, in fairness, have like a policy of they don't normally like to take for reasons like this to stop people doing stupid shit like I did. They like to have you for a bit on board and see what you're like and start to work with you and plan out a longer phase. But I, at this stage, was kind of coming in hot at the runway, with engines braking, and I was a bit in need at that stage. So they were like, you're kind of within striking distance. You've done well enough to get yourself here. We'll work with you on this occasion. And then they did. So then I got on, started working with Jeff. And yeah, in fairness, like instantly kind of it was fairly transformative, just in the approach, in the knowledge, and like just I was kind of, it was a lot of guesswork what I was doing myself. I did the easier half myself, so it was manageable. I was losing about 1 kilo a week, but I was still doing like crazy high volume. I was still like, I was on a course to like burn out completely. But yeah, what was the initial question again? Sorry, I've been rambling for ages.
You pretty much answered it.
Yeah.
Was your total fat loss phase leading up to the stage, so your total prep, was it 6 months then? So there's the 3 months before working with Jeff, and then there's the 3 months with Jeff, and then on to stage?
Yeah, there was about, thankfully, there was a little bit of a maintenance phase in between, because one of the shows I was supposed to do got cancelled and moved. So unintentionally, I got like 3 weeks off in the middle where I just tried to maintain, which probably also saved me a little bit. But yeah. And in fairness, we did like diet breaks and stuff when I was with Jeff, and refeeds and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Right. So it was a total of, it was somewhere around 20 kilos that you lost from your starting point to stage. Got it. 20 kilos over 6 months plus the 3 weeks maintenance. That's crazy. Did you what did you find the toughest parts of accomplishing that kind of fat loss were?
I like physically, I suppose, sleep was rough. Brain fog was horrendous. I think like the suffering element of it, I wouldn't say was the worst bits at all. I would say the hunger, the low energy, all of that was kind of doable, and in a very weird masochistic way. I think, those of us who engage in this thing, you start to get a little bit of a kick out of like pushing yourself, and become a little bit of a sucker for punishment, and you just, it feels a bit badass, so you just want to kind of push harder, and are getting some positive like reinforcement in that way. So I would say probably, yeah, it was probably the effect that it was having externally was the biggest challenges. And I think you lose sight a little bit of things that are outside the goal. I think especially maybe first time, I think if I was to do it again, my entire mindset would be different. And maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think it would be a transformed prep, or it would be a completely different experience, because I wouldn't lose sight as much of outside importance shit in your life. Like I do respect and appreciate a lot of Jeff's messaging, in that, as much of an enthusiast as he is about bodybuilding, which is clear, he's been doing it for the longest time, he is also like quite principled and not fanatical. And like, you see these coaches which is like, you're gonna get fucking peeled glutes or die or whatever, whereas I always felt like he at times was a lot more kind of responsible and measured with the approach than I was. I was like, let's just kind of keep going and going. Whereas he was like, let's, it doesn't matter if on your first show you don't really have like shredded glutes, or, he was concerned about me as an athlete, and you know, other things when I was starting to lose a little bit of sight of that, I think, which is I think, you know, commendable and pretty essential in the role that he's in. So yeah.
Yeah, he's really good at helping to keep our priorities in check.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I really like working with him too.
Yeah.
Did you find that like when you're on your prep that like you're on YouTube, you're watching natural bodybuilding vlogs all the time, like you're looking up weird food ideas and like you're watching like prep athletes doing their workout videos all the time? Like were you kind of in that kind of tunnel vision mode?
Totally. I kind of became a completely different person, to be honest. Um, which my girlfriend wasn't too happy about. Like
Yeah.
she was actually really encouraging and pushed me to go in and give this thing a shot, and probably gave me a bit of confidence to, you know, face some of those fears around, you know, what people might think or whatever. But then like when I just completely transformed into this person who could only think about one thing and all that for a while, it definitely put a little bit of stress on things, but that makes diamonds, as they say. No, but like, yeah, I think uh sorry, I lost my train of thought there. What was your question? I
Did
keep forgetting questions. Sorry.
did you find that the balance, like having balance, like what do you feel was the most challenging part? Was that like maintaining relationships? So with your girlfriend, was like
Mhm.
that a big one of the external struggles that you mentioned? Like was that a big one, was maintaining that relationship or other relationships? Or could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it was the one of the issues was that I definitely, like, you become much less social, your mood is lower. But I think I was, and I think one of the reasons why it wouldn't happen as badly on the next time round, if I'm doing another show at some stage, is that it was kind of a mindset thing, and you know, it's okay for me to feel this way, or it's okay for me to withdraw, or you know, a little bit of a, you know, pity party in the head, saying, you know, I've had such a long, you know, hard day. Like I literally, it literally fucking hurts to walk. And every time I lift my foot, it's like there's a concrete brick attached to the bottom. And I think that mindset was allowing me to maybe withdraw and not be present and be absent. Um, but I don't really think that like absence is permissible in the way that I previously did, which was very confusing to me at the time as well. I feel like I got really dumb on prep. Like I feel like I lost all of my intellectual faculties. I just got stupid. So it was really difficult, and probably emotionally stupid more than anything. So it was really difficult for me to work out why people were pushing against, and I interpreted it as, you know, they don't want me to succeed, or they don't want me to chase this ambition, or you know, whatever, which is backwards. They just wanted the best for me, and they were probably a little bit worried that I was getting fanatical, which I was. But I think the one sec, sorry. I keep forgetting your questions. I need to start writing these down.
No, you're good. I think everything that you mentioned is so relatable to
Yeah,
prep athletes. I know for me, everything that you described, I've experienced all of it. I've experienced all of it to their most extremes, and I
yeah,
found that some preps for me have been easier than others, but it almost, at least from my perspective, it gets easier each time you do a new prep. But something that you mentioned, you're already thinking about like, hey, like the next time I do a prep, I already kind of know what I'm going to expect and how I'll change things. And I think for that reason, from my experience, that's what makes each prep easier
mm,
and more manageable, is because you already know what to expect. So you can kind of prepare ahead of time and have, if you need to, like for me, like setting boundaries for myself. So like, for example, for one of my preps, my first two preps weren't terrible. One of them, the first one was coached not by Jeff, but by someone else. And my second prep was was uncoached or self-coached, and they were okay because I didn't get myself lean enough. Like I was still probably like 10 pounds over what I probably should have been to get like elite level conditioning, or what we would consider elite level conditioning, like really striated glutes, tight
Yeah.
everywhere.
Mm.
So they weren't that bad. They were tough because I'd never been that lean before, but it didn't get super, super nasty. But my
Yeah.
third prep, it was another self-coached prep before connecting with Jeff, and that was the nastiest one, where I tried to push the elite level conditioning by myself before I was ready for it, and before I had like I needed somebody to get feedback from. Like I really, in retrospect, wish I had a coach to get some feedback from and some more direction. But that was the tough one for me. That was when I started to do really weird stuff like food guarding. Like I didn't want to eat around people. I didn't want to go do any social eating. Like I didn't want to go eat at restaurants, and that really took away from everything. And I also like didn't like I got pretty shredded, but I ended up like not even looking amazing because I was like just stressed myself out by the time I got to the end, that I didn't even look that good. It wasn't even worth it. But
Mm.
that prep taught me a lot about that kind of external struggle that you mentioned, like
Mm.
being social, prioritizing relationships, learning how to let go of food. That was a big thing. It was like the
Yeah.
food guarding thing for me is like, sorry, I gotta go. It's 3 p.m. I gotta have my third meal of the day. Like I'm gonna go hide in my room and eat. Like see you guys later in an hour, because that's how long it's gonna take me to eat this meal. um, but yeah, but then for me, it's then I did the next prep a couple of years later. That was in 2023 with Jeff, and I knew I needed help with that in particular, that kind of
Mm.
thing, and
Mm.
I learned a lot. It went so much smoother.
Mm.
That was my fourth prep. It went so much smoother.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons it went smoother was not just having a coach, and that was a huge part of it, but it was from kind of making all the mistakes in the previous prep, doing all the
Mm.
weird stuff and experiencing all of the really, really nasty stuff that can go wrong, that did go wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if that kind of resonates with you at all. That was a little bit
Yeah. Hugely.
relatable to your own experience, but
Yeah, I think I did all of the. I think even though I did have Jeff in my corner and stuff, and it probably would have went a lot worse. I think I still tripped on a lot of the booby traps and the wires. So yeah, the food guarding thing, I had a bit of that. Do you know what? I actually think I heard bodybuilders talking about it, which normalized it, and I didn't hear them talking about it in a negative way, which almost made me think, oh, this is all right. Um, and didn't try and fight it, and then almost justified it as well, kind of like, this is what happens when you get ridiculously shredded. Like, so I almost was like, okay, I'm gonna go eat all my meals by myself and everybody else is at the kitchen table. And yeah, that pushed that I feel like for others as well, that was weird. Like even then, more so for myself, the food focus was tough. um and that's something that would have made my prep much easier if I wasn't engaged in that as much. I didn't really realize how draining that was. I think that, like, scrolling on TikTok food porn for an hour, it drains your energy because you're literally sitting there stimulated. Like, you can't eat, so you're getting a dopamine kick from watching this food, and it's making your food focus worse, and it's going to be, ringing around in your head for the rest of the day, then even more, all of the donuts and shit you've just been looking at. And you're drained at the end of it, because instead of, doing something relaxing and chilling out when you're so low on energy anyway, you're doing something that's getting you excited. And so I think the whole yeah, the approach to food. And another thing is like spending hours in the kitchen, making the most extravagant, amazing meal I could possibly make with my 400 calories, whatever the hell I had left for the day. Um, and then the other thing I was going to mention, um, supermarkets, spending way too long in them. And then
oh
also
yeah,
sorry, actually, yeah, one of the biggest things which I heard since, which I think is really useful for athletes, is kind of making your food simpler, not more extravagant, on from like a palate perspective and from a taste perspective. Like over seasoning, everything tastes amazing. You don't need to put amazing sauces. Like as restricted as I was on my calories, I was still allocating, 50 calories on a meal for sauces and shit, which was so silly, because that's, less filling. Obviously, it's not going to fill you up in any way. It's going to make you more food focused. And it literally ends up your food, which should taste good, tastes like crack. And then, thankfully I never had any issues with like binging or any instances of kind of losing control or anything like that. But if you are somebody who is maybe prone to that or anything like that, a surefire way to make it more likely is to take an approach where you're trying to maximize the flavor in every meal and following all of these recipes where you can get the tastiest fried chicken for 500 calories with hot sauce and whatever else. So like so many things that I did, I wouldn't do in hindsight on the second time around, which is one reason I think I was keen to share this with other people in terms of maybe if I was coaching or whatever. And it's another reason why I am convincing everybody around me that is like, oh, you should never do that again. That it won't be as bad if I am to go about it a second time, because these things add up in a big way. And I feel like that, coupled with the mindset and that I'm choosing to do this, that it's like, it's a privilege, but I still have obligations. And also kind of, if I start to not be able to show up for the things that I need to show up for in my daily life as a man, then I can pull this shit. This is not like the end of the world. So I think there's a lot of booby traps. So get yourself a coach and don't step on them as you're on your way to the stage, I suppose.
Everything that you've mentioned, I feel like I would have benefited so much from hearing all of this earlier on. So I think if anyone's listening and they haven't heard this before, or if they're getting everything that you're sharing as reinforcement, I think it's all of it's super helpful. I know from my own personal perspective, if I understood these concepts earlier on, then like that third prep for me would have been a lot better if I knew these things. And something that you mentioned earlier too about like you kind of noticed on social media that there is like a camp of bodybuilders and coaches and influencers, a certain school of thought, like it's like basically get shredded or die. So it's like, yeah, you're going to have food focus, you're going to do the food guarding thing, and that's normal in prep. And so that's one school of thought. And then that's not the only school of thought though. There's another school of thought, which is you can actually do it with, doing some work to detach yourself from food, the food focus and food guarding, so that you can prioritize the other things. And with this school of thought, then that actually will lead to a better result, because you got people, you're prioritizing people around you, and chances are your show day is going to be better because and you're going to enjoy it more because you're not as stressed, and you got people helping you out because they actually want to be there because you didn't like push them all away, right? So that's the other school of thought that a lot of people don't know, because I think that we're natural bodybuilders, and we want to go into it like being super hardcore. So like that was my personality for a long time. It was like, hey, I'm going to be super hardcore. I'm going to cave myself in. I'm going to shut everyone out. I'm going to shut myself in. I'm just going to focus on this for months and months and months. And that didn't work very well for me. And I wish I knew about this other camp, this other school of thought that, that we're talking about here. And, some of those things too, about really good points about making your meals during prep a little bit more basic and less elaborate with all of the spices and the tastiness, basically. And when you think about it, it makes sense. It's like you're going to be super hungry. Your palate will have changed, so everything's going to taste better. So if you put in all of this extra effort in making your meals taste absolutely phenomenal, you're going to be hungry. The meal's going to probably be small already. So you finish the meal, what's going to happen is you're just going to want way more of it, but you're not going to be able to have it. So that's just going to lead to more of an energy drain at the end of the day, versus having just like a more basic meal. And it's still going to taste really good, but it'll be easier by the time you finish the meal to just be like, hey, I mean, it sucks that the meal's done. I could eat another one, but it won't be as painful to kind of say, to call it quits on eating for that meal. But
Definitely. it's a good point what you say about like a lot of us that go into this, kind of have something to prove, and like this is our avenue where we feel like we're able to push and feel like we're disciplined and kind of hardcore with something. It's our, we, most of us in our daily lives, we don't have a load of hardcore shit that we have to or get to engage in. More have to be honest. I think it's we're lucky that we live in a peaceful society and don't have that much hardship that we have to go through. So this is kind of an opportunity for you to push and see what you're made of, and really test yourself and see kind of if you got that grit. But at the same time, the fact that you're going into it with that mindset leads a lot of people to chasing things for the sake of them being hard, which will only result in a worse outcome. If your effort is consistent, but one road is got speed bumps on it and one does not, the car that doesn't have speed bumps is going to get there quicker, or going to get there, going to get a little bit further. So I think trying to make things easier and listening to the wisdom of others is going to result in, if all you care about is the outcome, is going to result in a better outcome. It's going to result in less, backlash from people around you, from your work, your other things aren't going to suffer. So it's the only option is the easier route, and taking the easier route and putting in as much effort as you can is still unbelievably hard. So don't worry, you're not hard if you do things the smart way. Doing things the dumb way is just dumb.
Well, it's like I think when you do things like intentionally, maybe at times like force yourself to like go eat out with family and not just stay within the confines of whatever your meal plan structure is. So like
Mhm.
forcing yourself to go outside of that structure, like it is tough. But I
Mhm.
think doing that kind of thing too, and this is to one of the points that you made like right at the beginning of our conversation, um, which was, I think you mentioned that like you love this natural bodybuilding thing, you love fitness and the competition that you did because it leads to growth spilling over to all avenues of life. I think that's, you said something to that effect, right? Well, I think that this is one of these core elements where if you can force yourself to kind of go outside of your regular structure within a prep, to prioritize like family members or friends or your partner or just other important things in life, I think more growth can come from that because there's an element that sacrifice or that involves extra sacrifice in doing that. You sacrifice your own structure, which might be painful, to still stay on track, but to prioritize the other things, which I don't know. I think that just thinking out loud, I think that might be a really good way to reinforce and promote universal self-betterment, not just within
Mhm.
bodybuilding, but
Mhm.
that could be something that really does spill over to everything outside of bodybuilding. To
Yeah.
your point, um, how did that competition go?
Pretty good. I came second in the novice class, or no, I came third in the novice class, and I came second in the open tall class, which just
Nice.
worked out that way. The novice class was absolutely stacked. It was like 15 competitors or something, and everybody was peeled and massive. So, sorry, that sounds really cocky, but the rest of the guys all look great. But yeah, so it went well, and then I decided to do a second show as well, which was the week after. It was a WMBF show as well, so I didn't even know that was going to be on when I first signed up. So I was like, that sounds great. So the WMBF Ireland was on the week after the NFBI, and then I came. I don't actually know where I came in the second one. So the novice class was on again, but on this occasion you couldn't compete in both the novice and the open. Um, so myself and Jeff chatted it out, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's grand. I'll go. I'll go in the open. I'll go in the novice then, and maybe pick up a little bit more silverware." And then Jeff challenged me to try out for just the open class, because it was a WMBF show. he was like, if you're in this thing and you want to see where you stack up, this could be a great opportunity. Like, we already know you're good enough to place in a novice class. So I listened to him and went to the open class and got absolutely smoked. But it was cool. I was the tallest on stage by, I don't know, like a foot, because I made the seven. It was done by weight categories. I made the 79, or I made the 70 to 80 kilo class, just because my first season, I just don't have enough muscle on the frame yet. So it was the cutoff. I was like just within like 0.5 of a kilo within the cutoff, but everybody else was like a foot shorter and same weight basically. But there was people flying over from. There's a guy from Italy. There was like two guys from the UK. There was a guy from France, I think. There was a guy from Spain, or two guys from Spain in my class. So because there was a pro card on offer, it was stacked. And like a lot of the
Wow.
names, I even, I know some of the coaches that were flying over were top coaches, and
Wow.
really, really good athletes. So it was good it was a good opportunity. I do, wish that maybe I had gotten another medal in the other class, but in fairness, I wouldn't have learned anything from doing a novice class. And I think, looking at it from Jeff's kind of long-term view, it did make sense. And it kind of, if I placed, or if I'd even, come first or something in the other, it might have been more satiating or something, or, oh, I've done that thing, I've ticked it off. Whereas it did leave a little bit of hunger. I came second in the week before. I was like, maybe I could be in with a shot. But it didn't scratch that itch on a novice win. So it's definitely made me want to go back and kind of do more and do better. And yeah, some stage in the future maybe. So yeah.
Well, that was totally the logical thing to do. It makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. Like, you go up against this super, super competitive open class where it sounds like it was absolutely insane. Like, all of the different countries, or athletes from all of the surrounding countries, flying over to shoot for that pro card. I can just imagine the genetic pool all showing up for that pro card. But I feel like that was such a valuable thing to do, because seeing how you stack up against everyone else, it actually, I think what you're alluding to is it gives you an idea of what you can improve upon for the next time that you compete. And if you hadn't done that, then maybe you would have like, you just wouldn't know how much you would need to improve, or what you'd need to improve, or whatnot. So it seems like that was definitely the strategic move, and it makes sense. And it would have been super valuable. How did you feel when you stepped off stage for the last time, the competition, the season ended? What were some of the feelings that went through your head thinking back?
I think so. After the second show, I was definitely a bit disappointed, not placing in that one, and kind of the what ifs of, oh, what if I went in the other class? But that was kind of short lived, because I did realize, I didn't look bad on stage next to those guys. I think when Jeff was saying it to me, he was like, you won't look foolish up there. I wouldn't be putting you, or suggesting that you go up against, these top level guys, if I thought you would embarrass yourself. He's like, you've managed to get elite level conditioning. You've a good structure, and kind of, if you get up there, you're gonna belong on that stage, and then we'll be able to see how far you are away from kind of, placing, or anything like that. So I think the feelings initially after, if you don't get a result, you're always going to be a little bit gutted. But I think, to be honest, the feelings that I would now think back to more so was that week before, and the first show. And I don't really have any negative feelings around the competitive season in the slightest. I think it went like amazingly. I think I got so much out of it in terms of knowledge and experience. And that first win was kind of not win, but that first time placing and that first time kind of getting a medal was just like, yeah, it was, and it was unbelievable, but it was also something that I absolutely had no real expectation of going in as a novice. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to place. I don't know, how I'm, I don't know. I was happy with the product that I brought, and that was completely enough for me. I didn't know what a bodybuilding show entailed, what it was going to feel like, what I was going to, if I was going to, mess up on stage, or you just don't know the first time out. So all I wanted to do was go out there, enjoy it, and just kind of take it all in and experience it. So I think the placing and getting a medal on top of that was a bit surreal, and it was, yeah, it was a great feeling. But the competitive season as a whole was, yeah, it was dope. It was really, really cool. Yeah, still makes me smile thinking back to it.
I have a couple more questions for you. How did you find transitioning after the last competition ended into an off season? Did you find that it was initially difficult to gain back body fat or to gain weight back? Did you find that it was difficult to switch to not having like a competition as a goalpost to strive for? What did you find that process to be like?
Yeah, it was rough. It was. I think even, everybody can warn you and prepare you verbally for it, but you kind of, till you go through it, you don't quite realize the challenges. And it is like just kind of walking off a cliff edge in terms of being at the highest of highs, and then like your mood is probably baseline, just about 3 or 4 notches below where it normally is when you're doing a prep, but you're getting all of this excitement, and you're getting closer to a goal, and you're excited about the day, and you're excited with the progress that you're seeing visually, that it kind of brushes over it a lot. So once that's all gone, and you realize your baseline is like way lower than it's ever been anyway, just probably chemically and hormonally, I think it's tough enough thing to get through. And I think the food then is also something it's kind of almost a bit scary. Like you're I feel because I kind of pushed so hard towards the end for that like last bit of conditioning, and you don't realize, and you're so dialed that you're so motivated that you kind of don't realize how intense some of those symptoms are getting, because your motivation is at an all-time high, that you're managing to curb them. But then, when you go out for a meal after and you've let yourself kind of indulge, you realize that there's no kind of bottom to the pit that is your stomach, and there's no end to the dopamine that your brain will release from tasty things. So it's really daunting to kind of look forward, not have a goal, not have like direction, not and not know when this is going to end as well, or like catastrophize a bit and like, oh my god, I'm gonna get to 120 kilos because this is just never going to stop, and and everybody around you being like, oh, you're going to stay shredded, and you think you're going to end up be bouncing back to before the whole prep. And so I did manage the post prep period fairly well on the scales, but I think the mental element is challenging, and all of those kind of fears of the what ifs, and which is another reason why doing another prep will be easier, because the knowledge that you gain and the hindsight and understanding how you will react and manage in those situations because you've done it before, it's just kind of I think I can't see how it wouldn't be so much easier second time. Not that it's going to be easy, but there's so many things that hindsight just will make a breeze almost by comparison to some of the struggles that you go through the first time. But yeah,
It's a weird feeling. Yeah, it's a weird feeling, right? Where you finish prep, then you have access to all the food in the world, and then you eat all the food in the world till you're full. But then, like you noted, I think you articulated it really well. It's like there's a pit with no bottom.
Yeah.
It's like that's been my experience where I can eat, go for seconds, go for thirds. I'm basically like bloated to the rim, and then go in for even more, and then want to keep going. It's tough. It's strange. It's almost more difficult than the prep diet itself is managing that initially, especially the first time you experience it. I always experience it after every competition season that I've done. I always get it to some extent. I think most people do, and
Yeah.
to some extent, and I suspect it's healthy to get back to a healthy body fat
Yeah.
percentage relatively quickly, but it's tough. That initial little bit has always been tough.
Yeah.
Um, how long was it, going back to our conversation a little bit earlier when you mentioned that one of the most difficult struggles throughout the prep was the kind of external element? How long do you feel it took before your frame of mind changed from like being super hyper focused on prep to being able to like get back to your normal self as far as like your relationships go and your social life goes? Like, was it immediately like, hey, the prep's done, I can get back to normal life? Or was it like it took a little bit of time for your head to kind of get back on your shoulders?
Yeah, it took a bit of took a long time, man. I think I would say I did my show in uh kind of September, end of September. I wouldn't say I felt myself until like after Christmas, probably. Um, I think socially, I just wasn't. I wasn't funny, which is just like weird. Like I'm not a particular, like I'm not a hilarious guy, but I just couldn't make jokes. Like would normally be making jokes with my girlfriend, with my family, with my friends and stuff. I was so droll. I was so, and it's even somewhat cool and acceptable. Well, not cool, but acceptable to be fixated and talking about nothing but your show when it's a week away. But when that's all you got and you've already done it, and like people are like, you're not doing them for years. It leaves a bit of a vacuum post show, which is tough to navigate. And you also have to, if you have neglected other areas of your life, suddenly you've got to start unraveling the knots that you've been tying unknowingly or knowingly. So yeah, I think the post prep phase is a struggle, and it can be made better with proper kind of, if you're coached and you're made aware of these things, and you don't make prep as difficult for yourself, you're going to have an easier time coming out of it. So if your food focus is going to be lower, like if you're spending every day scrolling TikTok for an hour watching food videos, when you come out of the prep and you suddenly reintroduce hyperpalatable food, you're probably going to be more likely again to succumb to all of those temptations, and you're always thinking about food. And yeah, so I think navigating the post prep period is almost as important probably as the pre prep, and probably and definitely more important for your own well being. And I think that's again me coming in trying to budget my way to stage, and because bodybuilding is expensive, it's very expensive. So I think in your budget, if you want to do it, budget for post prep phase, because if you're doing it solo, it's going to be even rougher than it has to be. But yeah.
All of that is super helpful, I think, for anyone that's considering doing a bodybuilding prep, bodybuilding shows,
Mm.
having an understanding of what comes after, what to prepare for, and the struggle that honestly, I think most people that do bodybuilding shows experience these kind of struggles at least to some degree, maybe on a
Yeah.
spectrum. But I can speak for myself and say that everything that you've described, I've felt it and I've struggled with it from after every show that I've done. So I think that it's invaluable for people to get to hear about it
Mm.
beforehand, and or if for people to hear about if they have experienced it before, just to know that you're not
No,
the only one. You're
yeah,
not the only one that's felt it. So I think
yeah,
all of that is invaluable to share. My
yeah.
last question for you, I think, is do you have concrete upcoming competition plans in the next few years? And if so, what are your what kind of natural bodybuilding goals do you have in the future?
Um, so I have nothing concrete. I suppose mending certain relationships and things after has not made it easy to kind of say, "Oh, I'm definitely going to do one next year," type of thing. Not that I ever would have. Or I think for especially like at my level for a novice and stuff, you'll need at least 2 years to really kind of take a lot of value out of your off season. Because if you're cutting for half of the year, then you're going to be missing out on a lot of gains that you need to make at this stage. Um, I would like to do another show, absolutely. I think when doing another show, I would have the caveats that I have these kind of things that I'm going to hold kind of principle and most important. Um, and I won't compromise on. If those things are really starting to suffer, I'll kind of withdraw, type of thing. I think the way I did it last time is not a way that I would want to do again at all. And I think kind of talking to people around me and you know in my relationships and stuff, I think with that in mind, I would definitely like to do one in about a year or two. I think actually maybe even longer. But I think the off season is been so productive and is so productive, and I'm enjoying it so much that it doesn't really matter when I take the stage, um, because it just means like I'm going to be slightly further along in the journey, and it's not, and I'll be slightly more developed. And I think the the stage like the sooner I step on, the less developed I'll be. And I don't think at this point now, with my current training setup, that it's giving me any kind of boost anymore. Like the first time, it literally supercharged my motivation, my desire, my routines, everything. But they've remained consistent, and I imagine will kind of continue to remain consistent until I decide to step back on. So that is the biggest dodge of an answer you could have ever received. I think it's important to not just say, these things went wrong the last time, or could have been done better the last time, and I'm not going to learn from them. I absolutely will. It's something that I'm genuinely passionate about. I think the people around me see that I'm passionate about, and they want me to kind of pursue my passions also. So I think if the time is right in the future, if my career wise it's looking good, relationship wise it's looking good, and I do things in the best possible way, I'm hopeful that I will get back to stage. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's so valuable, and uh, taking time between shows, not rushing to things too quickly. And it is really valuable to take extra time between seasons, because like you noted, you'll be better developed, you'll have more muscle anyways. And
Yeah.
then you get to focus on like the fun part of bodybuilding, which is
Yeah.
body building, right? You
Yeah.
get to focus on the building part. That's the part that I like the most too. So anyways, no, that's awesome. Um, yeah, Rory, this conversation has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed getting to know your history, your background with lifting, and all about what your prep journey was like, how the competitions went. And I think that anyone that's listened is going to get a lot of value and relatability from not just the positives about going through prep, and competing and also experiencing the off season, but also what some of the negatives are, what to expect. I think that is truly invaluable to get to hear firsthand from your experience. So thanks for this, man. This has been awesome.